Okay, my first thought is this. I have to say it. Hey, Mark Goddard. Now you know. Now you know. Had the same things happen when Nick Diaz fought Anderson Silva. You know, he did all kinds of stuff, and I'm looking at Mark Goddard. I can see the look like, you got to be shitting me. And hey, all you can do is roll with it. You got to tell him to fight and stuff, but you know what? It is part of the show, and it all played out well. So I looked at, and when we did that, quick show and talked about, this change of opponents and what was going to happen here, I looked at it and I thought, hey man, this is a close fight. And this is both guys older. Both guys, have losses, in their last fights. Both guys are not who they were, years ago, but they both match up pretty well. The real difference we're going to see in this, and I did see it, was who had gotten even older. Who was the guy that slowed down more? And I think that the real difference is when I say slow down more for me, Nate's never been a fast guy. He's never, he throws a lot as far as volume, and some of his shots, will come from good angles that look like they're quick, but he's not real fast. He's not fast of foot at all. His hands aren't that fast, but he throws a ton of, shots, ton of volume, and he just keeps that pressure. And it's pressure that, when Tony is a guy that he's a pressure fighter and he likes to come forward, and Nate likes to come forward. And you look and you said, okay, someone's going to be the guy that's going to end up leading this. Someone's going to be the guy that is in control of that. And whoever that guy is going to be the guy that's going to win this fight. And that's exactly what really happened. Tony came out and he was trying to control and push Nate back, and he was. He couldn't keep it going. It was too much. He couldn't take some of the pressure that Nate was pushing back with in the combinations, and it made Tony have to start to reset a lot. And as Tony started to reset more and more, he started losing more and more ground, and the front pressure of Nate coming after him and him not being able to get that second to relax, that second to reset, that second to catch just a gulp of air. It started to play out in this fight, and you could see it. And it started to play out in the fact that Tony took this fight, not, this fight, obviously last second, but he took the Lee fight with 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And so, and that was supposed to be a 3-round fight, coming in at a heavier weight, carrying more weight and stuff. In the end, all of that started to catch up with him, and he took some damage. I'm going to say it. Your fight against Tony, you took damage, early on in that fight, and you could see how it had an effect. Tony took damage throughout this fight, and it had an effect, and you could see things that worked for him in the past just weren't working for him against Nate. They were missing things that would land for him in the past. Little things that he would do that all of a sudden it just switched the momentum. He wasn't able to switch it up here. But, man, he fought his ass off. And I goddamn, I love the guy. And my hat's off to him. He went out there just to fight. And he fought as good as he could. In the end, he gets caught with the guillotine. And you talked about that guillotine and, the fact that you've been in grappling competitions. And you knew, hey, you got to stay away from that goddamn thing because it can catch you. And when it's put on quick, he's good with it. That's what caught him.
First, I want to say to both fighters, great job.
Yep.
Nick and Nate both. Not Nick and Nate, but Tony,
well, Nick
Tony
did a great job in the
Nate,
corner.
Tony and Nate. Look, it just Father Time's undefeated, and that's really what it comes down to. And John, you and I were talking off air before we started, and the Tony situation is, for me, it resonates because exactly where Tony is right now is where I was when I fought him.
Yeah.
He is, I can see it in his body. I can see it in his muscle tone. I can see it in just the way his facial features are. A lot of things change. Your face starts to change. Your body starts to change. You're not carrying the muscle that you used to be able to carry. You're not as explosive as you were before. he had some good tricks, up his sleeves. He was doing some good little back elbows. He was leading with the elbow. It just missed or just grazed, no cuts. That was one of the biggest things that people that I was reading online was like, oh, Tony's going to cut him because Nate's got so much scar tissue.
And they're used to that happening.
And they kind of almost got me believing. I'm like, oh shit, you guys might be right. I didn't even, when we did the lead up to this, I was like, I didn't even think about that when we did that little short show on Friday because of all the weigh-in shit. I was like, man, I didn't even think about that. You're right. Because there is so much scar tissue. Nate did a great job of keeping his defense up, not taking big shots. He took a couple good, hard, clean shots. But what I saw was Tony looked slower. Nate's not a fast guy. Tony had some good tricks up his sleeve, just wasn't able to land cleanly. But when I also look at, when you look at Max Holloway when he went to fight Dustin up at 155, I saw a little bit of that. Tony's first fight back at 170. Nate has been there for a while now. Just the muscle, you've got to be able to. You got to keep carrying the weight of another fighter who's naturally walking around and understands how to cut the weight and put the weight back on. And I know Tony knows how to do all those things, but it does make a difference if you're not putting the weight on, building the muscle, and putting the weight on properly over a time frame. Don't just think because you walk around with that weight that you're going to be able to jump in there with someone who walks around with that weight, but then also cuts down to get there properly, not properly, but is walking around a little bit higher. So by the time they get back and they rehydrate, they're a little bit heavier than just your walk around weight. I saw there was moments when I looked at the fight, and I don't know if it was the TVs I was watching it on, when I saw Nate standing face to face with them and exchanging punches. Nate looked a lot bigger, and Tony's not a small guy.
No,
Tony's like for 150. Yeah, they're very similar, but just Nate looked fuller. He looked bigger. He looked a little bit faster. He would look like he was out there relaxed and having fun. And I agree with you. The pressure of Nate Diaz gets to a lot of fighters, and especially when you're used to being the hammer like Tony Ferguson. He's used to being the one that walks people down, putting you in uncomfortable situations. He was doing that to me when I fought him. And like I said, it was weird because I'm used to sticking and moving when I was fighting, but I was also used to pushing forward and trying to wrestle you and do those things. He's exactly where I was when I fought him. And I look back to those moments in my career and I'm like, you only got a couple more left, buddy. And it's like, I love Tony Ferguson. Doesn't matter. I think he is a fucking legend in this sport. All the things that he has accomplished, all the things that he has done, he deserves the most respect. And same thing with Nate, but it's coming up. It really is. And what is this? Lost 6 now, I think, in a row, 5 or 6.
I believe so.
I think it's 5.
Yeah, it's just
Is it 5?
It's gonna be. I think it's
5.
6.
Yep.
So it's 5. Yeah. I think it's gonna be time, man. And I think he's got 3. I think he's got 3, and they're gonna have to make sure that they're opponents that make sense for him. He's gonna have to make sure they're opponents that make sense for him. So I don't know. I want the best for both of them. I hope that Nate Diaz riding off into the sunset. He gave a little bit of that GSP speech at the end. I'm going to go for a little bit. Who knows? I may come back, but there, he wants, and I think I said this 18 months ago. He's going to fight Jake Paul. And then I think there's a good chance he fights Conor McGregor in a boxing match. I think there's a good chance he does it outside and it's promoted separately. I don't think he wants to. Maybe Conor will use the UFC to help promote that fight between them. But
I think Conor said his contract's up at the end of next year. I saw that on Twitter where there was something like Conor's contract's up at the end of next year, and so there's speculation around that.
The end of this year or next year?
Next year. I just saw something on Twitter. I can't even remember what it was, but it wasn't.
Years.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things because if it was anybody other than Conor, I'm going to sit here and go, I know they can't box. UFC's got in their contract. They're not. Maybe Conor has it to where he can now, do another boxing thing without the UFC's consent. I kind of doubt it still.
I think it's still the UFC consent.
Thank you.
But here's the thing: is his contract?
I don't think they would give it.
His contract's probably not up if he doesn't. If they're offering him fights and he's turning them down, they're just extending it. Now he may have something in his in his contract that says.
I don't think that right now it doesn't matter as far as them offering him fights. He's been injured. And he's off because he broke his leg with in his last fight with Dustin. So until he tells them I am back, I'm ready to go, they don't have to offer him a fight. 2 pounds of chicken breast free for life.
We'll claim this deal at butcherbox.com/weighing in.